Reflections are a huge part of our day, especially with the aid of mirrors. We've come to think of mirrors as commonplace, but mirrors haven't always existed. How did the idea of the mirror first develop? Was it interest in the way we looked, or was it something else?
All over the world, civilizations were interested in reflection. However, not all civilizations were concerned with the individual looking back in the reflection. Aztecs used polished obsidian stones and believed that through the reflections on the stones they could communicate with angelic beings. In China, polished bronze was used as a mirror with the purpose of reflecting not only one's face, but one's heart and soul. The mirror had both spiritual and moral purpose. Egyptians used polished metals and foils with the purpose of looking at the individual.
With a strong interest in seeing oneself, as well as the potential to commune with other dimensions, the advancement in mirrors continued at a rapid pace. Polished stones and metals gave way to glass mirrors. Glass mirror production flourished in Venice, Italy, and as that production increased, so did the prevalence in our everyday lives. That prevalence can be seen heavily in the works of art of this time. A variety of information is important as a viewer of art, so the use of mirrors as a convention to expand that information base was one of many in a good artist's toolbox. The artist was able to show where a light source existed in a room, even if it wasn't in the frame of the painting. An artist could show objects in front of the foreground, be it people, objects, that wouldn't be seen otherwise. It gave the viewer more perspective as to their role in the environment. Were they included? Were they shut out? Some mirrors may show other people where the viewer would be standing, excluding them from the environment, giving an ostracized, voyeuristic, foreign feel to the viewer. The painter can also depict himself, allowing the viewer to see through his eyes. The mirror is also a unique tool for intentional confusion. The artist may choose to leave an item ambiguous. Is it a mirror? A window? A painting?
The most influential work of art that introduced the use of mirrors in art for hundreds of years to follow was Jan van Eyck's portrait of Giovanni Arnolfini and his wife Giovanna Cinnamini in 1434. The use of the mirror in the painting opened up the scene to the world in front of the painting. Previous to the use of mirrors, painters could only paint what was in front of them. But with the use of the mirror on the back wall in Van Eyck's painting, the viewer's eye is drawn to the back of the room in order to see the front of the room that lies outside the painting. In the mirror, the viewer sees that there are two other people in the room, standing where the viewer is. It has been said that Van Eyck's mirror was such a striking cultural mutation that it almost immediately replicated itself with variations in the work of his contemporaries. With the introduction of the first mirrors in paintings, it was critical that the artist distinguish mirrors from paintings. Artists used windows reflections to give the mirror a gleaming luster. Windows reflections played a critical role in allowing the viewer to understand that they were looking into a mirror. Also, the use of the convex shape of the mirror provides enough distortion that the viewer would not have expected it to have been a painting.
One example was Petrus Christus's A Goldsmith in His Shop, painted in 1449. The convex mirror in the far right-hand side of the painting extends the viewer's field of vision to the outside of the shop, where two onlookers gaze into the shop window. Like Van Eyck's painting, Christus uses the mirror to introduce another perspective to the viewer. Christus was able to place the goldsmith in front of a window looking out onto the street of his shop. Without the mirror, the viewer would have no way of knowing the full composition of the room. The viewer would have no idea what Goldsmith was looking at. The use of the mirror adds dimensionality to the painting. Unlike Van Eyck's mirror, Christus does not use the presence of a window in the mirror to show luster and shine. Instead, Christus shows the convex shape of the mirror and distortion around the edges of the mirror to convey to the viewers that indeed they are looking at the reflection in the mirror.
When the flat glass mirror was introduced into artwork, the challenge of the artist was to distinguish between a mirror and a painting. Diego Velázquez undertook this challenge in his painting, The Maid of Honor. Velázquez placed a mirror on the back wall of the room, similar to Van Eyck's mirror. However, he placed the flat rectangular mirror on a wall full of rectangular paintings. He is able to distinguish the mirror from the paintings by illuminating the mirror, while leaving all the paintings dark and unrecognizable. The edges of the mirror are especially light, giving the mirror a gleaming luster. In the mirror, the viewer sees two figures, possibly the king and queen, overlooking the painting of their daughter, Princess Margarita. Similar to Van Eyck's painting, the mirror is used to open up the room. The king and queen stand where the viewers are, outside the painting, but still present in their reflection in the mirror.
With the power of perspective, the painting was taken to a new tier of high art. It was the mirror that tipped the scales in a debate between painter and sculptor as to whose art held more value. The sculptor argued that because of the three dimensions, the viewer can see more angles of a sculpture than a two-dimensional painting. But the painter came back when, with the use of mirrors, he was able to show multiple angles at a single glance, whereas the viewer of a sculpture must walk around the sculpture in order to see those same angles. There may not be an answer to this debate, but the use of the mirror added a new depth and dimensionality to that of the two-dimensional painting.
Whether sculpture or painting, self-portrait would be next to impossible without a mirror. Johannes Gump's self-portrait gives a unique perspective on paintings of self-portraits, yet the painting leaves a question for the viewer. How did he paint his back while looking at the front in the mirror? I can only imagine this angle to be captured using more mirrors. Another interesting view of a self-portrait is Parmigiano's self-portrait painted in 1524, in which Parmigiano painted his self-portrait as a reflection in a mirror. The distortion of the convex mirror is the only indication that the painting is of a reflection and not simply a self-portrait. Without mirrors, we may very well have been robbed of Rembrandt's visual autobiography of works. Over time, it seems that the mirror has evolved from something of utilitarian properties to a convention of art, and then from art back to the commonplace utility. So commonplace, however, that people began to look more closely at themselves. Whether it was vanity or simply a strong interest in what the individual looked like, artists have depicted people admiring their reflections in hundreds of artworks.
This frequent, close observation led people to look below the surface of themselves, beyond the widening hips or deepening pores. Perhaps a case of history repeating itself, mirrors provided an opportunity for people to look into their own souls, evaluate who they are, and evaluate their society. As with nearly anything, deeper consideration and reevaluation leads to growth, and use of mirrors has, indeed, grown. Mirrors are not limited to convention of paintings and sculpture. Architecture, film, music, photography, and performance art have all used the mirror to enhance their creative environment or statement. Clearly, there is not one mirror that was so influential in the world of art. It was the use of mirrors in the creation of pieces, and the inclusion of mirrors within works of art that gave new perspective, making those pieces so memorable and so influential themselves. Take a moment and reflect on that.